Hey everyone, and welcome back to Nighttime. We have a great show planned for you guys today with everything happening in college football last weekend, and we're going to touch on our sad loss to Navy. But go ahead and stay tuned. Nighttime starts now.
Things gon' change when I really hit the field. Undefeated champs, man, you know what's the deal. Tryna find a kid, I'm in the field doing drills. Boy, you just a sucker, you ain't never keep it real. 3 rings in my hand, I'm a warrior to the max. When I hang it up, they gon' have to give me plaques. Step up in the building and I only bring the facts. When I make a highlight, they gon' replay, run it back, okay? Always locked in, I don't got time to lax. Saying he the best, he could take a lap. Batted 1,000 when you check the stats. Boy, is you ready? You ain't gotta ask.
Welcome back to Nighttime, everybody. I think the first thing we got to talk about in this first segment is UCF blowing a 13-point lead versus Navy in the second half, and now the Knights have fallen to 2-2 on the season. I mean, Taylor, what's your takeaway from this game?
Yeah, you just said it. The Knights gave up a 13-point second-half lead, which is unacceptable for this team. This was their first AAC loss of the season, and honestly, I wish we could have at least made it to Cincinnati first because I feel that's coming. The Knights struggled to get off the field against Navy's defense, or their offense with their triple option, and Navy held the ball for 40 minutes while UCF only did for 21. Navy finished with 348 rushing yards. They had a block field goal, a punt that they blocked for a touchdown. It's just unacceptable at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I have no words for UCF this week. I mean, I kind of said before that I was going to go on air and slander them, but I don't even know if I can slander them at this point because honestly, I don't know if they're as talented as I thought they were beforehand. I don't know if it's the coaching. I don't know what. But we do have some offensive defensive players of the week for you guys. I mean, my offensive player of the week had to be Mikey Keene, true freshman starting quarterback. He went on the road to Annapolis and actually played a pretty decent game, 178 yards and 2 touchdowns. He looked poised in the pocket and he made some really good throws. But down the stretch, I mean, I think Gus took the game out of his hands and wanted some of our veteran players to step up, Taylor.
I completely agree. And honestly, if you wouldn't have said Mikey Keene, I would say him too. I'm very surprised with how he played, and I'm kind of looking forward for the rest of the season for him. But we'll touch on that a little bit later from me. My offensive player of this week was Johnny Richardson. Yes, he only had 11 carries for 63 yards, but kudos to him and Trillian Coles for stepping up for a star like Bowser because we're literally down 5 of our star players. So anyone that can step up deserves to be recognized. He was able to help Mikey Keene in his first start, and he was productive. Pretty much anything from this offense that I see that's productive at this point, I'm just going to give a shout out for. I know the defense is our main struggle, but honestly, kudos to the people that actually stepped up. I know we had a loss, but it is what it is at this point. I'm looking for more production next week.
It's just the same story for UCF the past 3 seasons. I'm kind of seeing a Josh Heupel effect. We put up a lot of yards, we put up a lot of points, but the offense just still doesn't look impressive. And yes, we kept the 30-point streak alive against Navy, but down the stretch, our offense was just bad. We couldn't put up points whenever we needed to. We're calling some very questionable play calls, especially on that last drive. Mikey Keene was 5 for 7 for 57 yards on that final drive. And Gus put in Joey Gatewood and tried to make him throw a pass when he hasn't thrown a pass all season. And we also tried to run that jet sweep he already ran 3 times before in the same formation. It's the only formation we even run that jet sweep out of. I don't know, Gus. I'm questionable about you at this point. But defensive players of the week. I have Bryson Armstrong. He had 22 total tackles. I think this was actually the only real bright spot for UCF this week besides Mikey Keene. He actually tied for the 3rd most tackles ever in a UCF game with 22. He was honestly the only player that could tackle efficiently, and he was the only player that actually knew what play was kind of coming out of the triple option. Don't you say, Taylor?
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, our defense, it's just a work in progress at this point. I don't know why it is because we're so far along in the season and we have some good defensive players, but I don't know. Maybe this week will be the week that it finally clicks for them. But my defensive player this week is Cam Good. He forced the first turnover for UCF this season, and he actually had 2. 8 tackles, 5 of which were solo. I mean, anything at this point for the defense. Just shout out for any little thing at this point.
Yeah.
We need big changes to happen. I just don't understand what the issue is. What do you think is the main problem with our defense?
The main issue is also depth, Taylor. Our defensive line stayed in the whole entire game. Most big Power 5 schools, they have like 2 to 3 sets of defensive lineman rotations they can bring in. And against Navy, a team that pounds the football every single play, they had almost plus of 65 carries in that game. That takes a lot of toll on a defense. And we kept the same 4 guys out there. I mean, we have a lot of injuries, but Cam Good, Kalia Davis, Big Cat Bryant, and Anthony Montalvo were on the field the whole entire game, and you could see they had the hands on the hips in the third quarter, and they were gassed. We're way more talented than Navy's offensive line, but we were just gassed, and we didn't know what was coming, and our perimeter players and our contained guys on the outside weren't able to stop a pitch, and they were able to turn the corner every single time. Yeah. It's a lot of penalties on defense, and it's a lot of discipline issues, and I'm also seeing.
They were tired against Navy. Like, UCF did a poor job of handling the outside edges and, in particular, the traditional triple option play with the signal caller pitching to a running back. I mean, even during the first half when Navy saw far less success, there were some flashes that UCF simply did not know how to defend that type of playing. The tackling was better, that much should be mentioned, but it's a start. UCF could still do a better job tackling moving forward. The interior rush defense did do fairly well, like you said, led by defensive lineman Kalia Davis, a player Navy struggled to block for much of the game. But, I mean, at this point, you got to give what you got to give. And if our defense is talented, they have to show out. But switching over, we touched on Mikey Keene a little bit, but what is your final reaction of seeing him step out onto the field for the first time for UCF?
For a first time coming on the field and a true freshman, he played pretty fair. I mean, he had an interception, but he had 2 touchdowns on 178 yards. Like I said before, he looked poised in the pocket. He looked confident when he was making his throws. Granted, it's a Navy defense. I mean, it was kind of a cakewalk for him, but just not for everybody else. But I'm actually going to be very confident in Mikey Keene moving forward, and it's going to be his first game in the bounce house this week against ECU, who's actually looked they've looked impressive so far this season. They don't have the record to show for it, but they don't sleep on them.
Yeah, honestly, I can't wait to see what he does in the comfort of the bounce house. He looked good. His defense shouldn't have put him in the position that they did with pressure on a true freshman quarterback to make the 4th down play in the final seconds of the game to beat Navy. But with practice and experience, I think he's really going to become a strong quarterback. So looking forward to the rest of the season, I'm pretty okay with Mikey Keene starting, and I feel comfortable. But we do play ECU this Saturday. What do you think about these strong running players that are coming in for this Pirates team? Yeah,
Keaton Mitchell's averaging 9.6 yards per carry. He's their best player on offense by far, and he's also a true freshman, and he looks very impressive, but they don't have a passing game. I mean, against South Carolina, Almer, he only had 77 passing yards, and they did not look good, but ECU's offense looked very powerful last week versus Tulane. They scored 59 points on their head, and it's gonna be a tough struggle for our defense, I would say, in the first half, because they're gonna throw a lot of things at us because they love to run a lot of trick plays.
Oh, I agree, because so far this year, Mitchell has scored 4 rushing touchdowns, like you said, averaged 9 yards per carry. The play-action passing from a quarterback that just went through his best game this season, Holden Ehlers, and he just went 21 for 32 for 288 yards and 2 touchdowns against Tulane. No interceptions thrown either. And allowing Mitchell to get going will be a recipe for disaster for the Knights. UCF must make that team one-dimensional and dictate to the East Carolina offense that it is not going to be extremely difficult to slow them down. But with Ehlers' passing game, we just have to be ready. They have a cornerback that leads the nation in interceptions, and going up against a freshman quarterback, that does scare me a little bit. But honestly, it's self-explanatory. Don't throw near his direction unless there's miscommunication and it's a wide open receiver. McMillian intercepted 4 passes so far this season, so that's what I'm honestly a little scared about going into this game.
Yeah, you touched about Jaquan McMillian. That guy is going to be a first-round pick in the NFL. He leads ECU in tackles with 33, also leads the team in pass deflections with 12, and also leads the nation in interceptions with 4. He looks like Trayvon Diggs out there, because, I mean, I have to shout out Alex Funderburk, because Trayvon Diggs, Dallas Cowboys player, Defensive Player of the Year, whatever. But Jaquan McMillian looks good. He looks fantastic. He's a lockdown corner. He'll probably be a late first-round pick in the next 2 years, especially considering he's a sophomore. But, yeah, if I was Gus Malzahn, I'm throwing away from him all game long.
No, and I think that you just hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's kind of scary, But we are going to talk about college football as a whole coming up with our next segment with a special guest. So go ahead and stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the HTF Hot Wings Challenge. One of you guys actually do hot sauce like regularly?
No.
No.
It's like the least black thing I do.
Oh, wow, okay.
I say Johnny goes first on this one.
I agree.
The Buccaneers are going to play the Washington football team.
That can't happen.
It will happen.
I'm terrified.
No, I really hate it.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. No. You're wrong. If it wasn't for Kanye jumping up on stage and doing that, I'm gonna let you finish, but no one would know what this was.
Nitro's a dump truck. And if you don't know what I'm talking about,
Why is Nitro thick?
I don't know how many squats I need to do to get up like something like that, but I will do it.
Oh! Oh my God!
Baseball, obvious reasons. Babe Ruth, if you want to go currently. I feel like that's just like a thing.
he jumped off the wall to catch the home run. We made it through all the way to the end. Thank you for joining us.
I'm never doing this again.
Hey guys, welcome back to Nighttime. So for this segment, we're joined by a super special guest, Grant Wheeler. Grant, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Taylor. Thank you guys for having me on the show this week, and I'm ready to talk some college football.
Grant, I'm so excited you're on this show. I mean, you've been on so many other shows in HTFN, and I've been wanting you on my show for the 6 weeks that we've had Nighttime, so I'm finally glad you're on, dude.
Oh yeah, I know. I've been waiting a long time for this, so let's get the show on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. But this week in college football, for a recap for me as a whole, would have to be upset week. It feels like 2007 all over again. 9 ranked teams lost on Saturday, and which upset this week do you guys think had the most significant impact on the college football landscape?
For me personally, the Florida-Kentucky game, I love every time Florida goes down. So sorry, Kyle, but that's just how I feel. With Trevin Wallace returning a blocked field goal for 76 yards for the go-ahead touchdown late in the third quarter, I think that's what gave it to Kentucky. And then Chris Rodriguez Jr. had a 9-yard scoring run early in the fourth, and Kentucky made a final defensive stand to hold off Florida 20-13. The 8 false starts compromised more than half of Florida's 15 penalties for 115 yards. I also don't understand why Emory Jones is still starting. He completed 23 of 31 passes for 203 yards, but the Gators were held way below their average of nearly 541 yards this season. But I just like every time Florida loses, so I just had to go ahead and bring that up. Grant, what about you?
I'm going to go with the Oregon-Stanford game. This is an Oregon team that a couple weeks ago went into Ohio State, took a victory from the Buckeyes, and I really thought they were on the right track in getting into the college football playoff, but they had a bump in the road this past weekend against Stanford on the road in conference. It just took me by surprise because Oregon, they were ranked 3rd in the country, and I expected a lot more from them.
Well, I mean, they were only ranked 3rd in the country because they beat Ohio State. Just because you beat Ohio State does not mean you're a top 3 team in the country, and Oregon has honestly not looked that impressive so far this season. And Stanford took them to the woodshed. Honestly. Taylor McKee played a great game, 230 yards and 3 touchdowns, and honestly they made Oregon look bad. And Anthony Brown did not look good in that game whatsoever. So I'm glad that they lost. I don't think Oregon was ever a top 4 team in the country to begin with. I don't think the Pac-12 is anything really. I mean, do you guys agree or not?
I mean, the Pac-12 is not really that strong of a conference, but I was more optimistic about Oregon because, again, that big win at Ohio State, it just, for some reason, that just...
It's Ohio State,
I
man.
understand,
I mean,
but
they have
program.
they have CJ Stroud, a redshirt freshman starting quarterback. It was his 3rd ever game starting. He was going against a top 10 team at home. I mean, I understand why Ohio State lost that game, and now they're bringing up some momentum, so I do think Ohio State's now a little bit better. If they played again, I think Ohio State would end up winning that game 100%. But
that loss to Stanford.
But I also have my upset of the week, which actually ends up being is Memphis versus Temple. Temple ended up winning the game 34-31. Both teams had over 450 yards of total offense. No defense was being played. But Memphis has now fallen off the pedestal. They're now 3-2 on the season, already 2 losses in conference play. I mean, just 4 years ago, UCF Memphis and Cincinnati were the top 3 dogs, and now it's just Cincinnati because a lot of teams in this AAC are playing a lot better football, like ECU, like Temple. The AAC conference has a lot of parity right now, and I'm honestly great to see it, besides UCF not being that good.
I agree. I want to touch on Cincinnati really quick because I think that maybe they have an opportunity to be a big name for the college football playoff. I think if Cincinnati goes unbeaten and doesn't get in, it's safe to say a group of 5 team will never make the playoff in a 4-team format. Grant, what do you have to think about that?
Yeah, so Cincinnati, if they stay healthy, they stay undefeated, they're already ranked 5th. They should get in. But I can see the College Football Playoff Committee pulling some crazy thing where they don't allow a group of 5 team into the playoff because, let's face it, it's been like that for years. So it would not catch me by surprise if, for some reason, Cincinnati doesn't get in. But they should. They should get that 4th or 3rd spot if they stay undefeated and stay healthy.
They should, but the College Football Playoff Committee doesn't love the group of 5. They absolutely despise the group of 5. I think Cincinnati actually is a top 5 team in the nation after going on the road to beat Notre Dame. I picked Notre Dame to win that game last week, and I was wrong. And I'm sorry, Cincinnati fans. Desmond Ridder is the real deal. He played a great game, and I think that was honestly a showing out party, especially since it was one of his first nationally televised games besides getting destroyed by UCF 2 years ago at the College Game Day on primetime, and also losing to Georgia in the All-State Sugar Bowl last year. Desmond Ridder's finally on the scene, and he's finally getting the credit that he deserves because he is one of the best quarterbacks in college football and might be an NFL quarterback one day.
Do you think that he has Heisman potential for this upcoming season?
Can you say that one more time?
Do you think that he has Heisman potential for this season?
I wouldn't say heights and potential, but I think that the College Football Playoff Committee isn't going to put Cincinnati in right away. I think when the first College Football Playoff Committee rankings come out in the next 3 weeks, I think Cincinnati's probably going to be sitting around 6 or 7, especially if Oklahoma does end up winning on Saturday versus Texas. I think they're going to bump up Oklahoma just because of the group of 5 slander. But sitting at 5 right now, Iowa and Penn State play this week. One of those teams has to lose. So Cincinnati's going to be top 4 in the AP poll. So we're going to see how the College Football Playoff Committee actually thinks of Cincinnati here in 3 weeks.
Okay, and we're also talking about these really good teams that are coming out of this playoffs, like this realm this season. But Georgia and Alabama, you can never really see them fall off ever. I know that Alabama's the better team. That's just my opinion, and I just think that they show out every game. Grant, who do you think's better, Alabama or Georgia?
Alabama's more complete. Offensively, they're superior over Georgia. Georgia's got a nasty defense, we know, but you can't bet against Nick Saban. I'm sorry, Kirby Smart, but Saban's going to beat you again.
I have to go against you guys. I have to go with Georgia. Camden Mowry, I know you're watching the show right now, and I apologize for what I said to you about Georgia being big, bad Georgia. They are big, bad Georgia. They have the best defense in the country, only allowing 5.4 points per game. They have the best statistical defense almost ever in college football, and I don't think Alabama's offense is all that. The only games that they've put up a lot of points were against bad defenses. And the only good defense they played so far this year was Florida on the road, and they struggled big time. They put up 31 points, but it was an ugly 31 points. Bryce Young did not look great, but they went against an Ole Miss team last week and won 41-14. He looked great, but yet again, it's a Lane Kiffin team. Who cares about defense? I think Georgia's offense has enough. I think Stetson Bennett does just enough what he has to do. And whenever JT Daniels comes back, that offense will be even better. They're really thin at the wide receiver position, but they have 2 really good running backs and a really good run game to help out that defense. So I got to go Georgia, guys. Georgia's number 1 in the nation, in my opinion.
They're the top 2 teams in the country. There's huge separation between those 2 and the rest of the country. We can agree on that, and they'll definitely be the top 2 teams come December if they stay healthy and don't lose games.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Alabama, Georgia, everybody else. I mean, I'm glad there's parity in college football, somewhat, besides the top 2 teams being better than everybody else. But I've always been so tired of the 4 teams basically being a lock for the college football playoff, and it's just very predictable what's going to happen.
Well, Clemson won't be there this year, that's for sure.
Oh, no, they're not even ranked anymore, and I'm very glad about it. This is the first time Clemson hasn't been ranked in 4 years.
Dabo Swinney's down bad.
Down bad.
Oh, down
Realistically,
bad.
this is our SEC championship game, though. So do you honestly, Kyle, really believe that Georgia can outshine Alabama in a championship setting?
The only thing that I have against Georgia, I think Georgia has a better team on paper. I think they match up with Alabama very well. A bunch of five-star athletes in the secondary to help out with all the athletes that Alabama has on offense. But no assistant of Nick Saban that's ever been his protege has ever beat him. Kirby Smart's never beat him. Lane Kiffin's never beat him. Steve Sarkisian never beat him. Nobody can beat Nick Saban, especially whenever he coached them themselves. I think that's the only thing that I have against Georgia at this point. I think they have a better team.
That's a part of the reason why I think Alabama is going to prevail against Georgia.
All right, well, we'll see at the end of the season how this all plays out. But when we come back, we're going to do our favorite segment, our primetime picks, so stay tuned.
Here's the story of a show creator who was gearing up to form a bigger crew.
One's a California guy,
A god of graphics.
one hosted Girls on Deck.
It's a story of a 4-year nightmare, which is finally coming to an end. Thank God.
And the new kid, a Packers lover.
Tampa forever.
So then one day all these people work together to face a year unlike one that's ever been. And his group rebranded in Orlando. That's the way we all became HTFN. 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 That's the way we became HTFN.
That's blasphemy!
Welcome back, everybody, to Nighttime. It's time for everybody's favorite segment, like Taylor likes to say, Primetime Picks of the Week. Last week, Taylor went 4-1, and I went 2-3.
I'm making a comeback.
Taylor's only loss last week was to UCF, but that's because we're not going to talk about that anymore. I already talked about that enough. But we have 5 games for you guys this week to pick. We have a lot of really good matchups, and our first matchup is going to be Texas versus Oklahoma. Taylor, go.
I'm going Texas over Oklahoma 31-27. I think the Texas offense plays better. The Oklahoma defense keeps this in range. And in the end, Rattler in the attack doesn't quite come through with the one clutch scoring drive. It needs to pull this out. So that's just my opinion. We'll see what happens. Grant, what do you think?
I'm going to go with the Sooners, 28-24 in this Red River showdown. I know Texas has been hot the past couple of weeks, but I think they're going to cool down. It's a rivalry game. Both teams are going to be really focused and amped up for this matchup. I think Oklahoma will do just enough, despite Spencer Rattler's struggles.
Spencer Rattler did look better last week versus K-State, guys. He had 3 passing touchdowns. But he still hasn't been what everybody thought he's going to be. I have to take Texas in this game 38-31. Texas has put up a combined 100 points in the past 2 games, putting up 70 on Texas Tech and then putting up 35 or 32 on TCU. So with Steve Sarkisian, the way he has this offense playing, I have to take Texas 38-31.
All right, moving on to our next game, Iowa and Penn State. I'm going Iowa 20, Penn State 17. Both teams are battle-tested and both bring strong enough defenses to take over. At home, though, Iowa will break through with a big performance and its biggest test yet. So, Grant, what about you?
Yeah, as you said, Taylor, Iowa's defense is very stout. I think they're going to pull it out and win 23-20. I think just having that home field advantage will help, and they'll do just enough to take care of the victory.
Yeah, it's not just the defense for Iowa for me. I think it's because Sean Clifford likes to turn over the football and being on the road, especially. Sean Clifford throws all his interceptions on the road. He doesn't really throw any at home. But Iowa has the best turnover differential in the whole entire country. They force the most turnovers in the whole entire country. And Sean Clifford likes to turn over the football. So, I think that's just the key for Iowa to win. And they looked dominant last week versus Maryland. I have to take Iowa 24-10.
All right, moving on to a hot Kentucky team after beating Florida. Kentucky versus LSU, I'm going Kentucky 26, LSU 17. The defense is scary, and LSU loses momentum after a heartbreaker to Auburn. So I don't know. I'm just going to have to go Kentucky on this one. They're on a momentum stride right now.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Wildcats here. Against Florida last week, I was surprised at first, but then after looking back in the film, I'm like, you know what? Kentucky's on a roll right now. LSU will hang around. It won't be a blowout, but Kentucky will pull away towards the end, and they'll secure the victory.
We saw the way that Kentucky's home crowd is, and they have one of the rowdiest college football fan bases and student sections in all of college football. And that Kentucky defense is for real. They stopped Florida with the 3rd highest rushing offense in the country to 200 yards, which is 150 less than what they what they've been averaging all season. And LSU's offense has not looked great. They've looked better the past couple of weeks. But I think that Kentucky defense is going to pull it out. Kentucky's going to get their first win over LSU since 2007. Give me Kentucky 28-21.
All right, moving into a game that I'm looking forward to this weekend, Ole Miss and Arkansas. I'm going Ole Miss 31, Arkansas 23. I think Ole Miss will strike fast, but it'll be slow and steady, wins the race kind of thing. Arkansas doesn't do the time of possession thing, but it'll have the ball for close to 35 minutes as the running game takes over in the second half. So I'm going the Rebels on this one. Grant?
Yeah, I'm going with Ole Miss 38-28. Their offense is more prolific than Arkansas's. That's going to be the difference. The Razorbacks, they just won't be able to keep up with that high-tempo offense from the Rebels. So, yeah, Ole Miss 38-28.
I believed in Woo Pig, but after seeing how bad Texas A&M is now, especially after losing 2 straight games, and barely beating Colorado 10-7, I honestly don't think that Arkansas is what everybody thought they were, and I apologize for believing that. So I have to take Ole Miss in that prolific offense. I'll give them 38-21. I think Ole Miss actually blows them out.
All right, guys, the Knights are back at home in the Bounce House. I hope that this team does not do me dirty on picks this week because I will not go against UCF. It's not in me to do. I'm going to go UCF 38, ECU 24. UCF needs to stop the run game, get their defense together. Please, God, let the Bounce House work its magic. Go UCF. Charge on, baby.
Yeah, I'm going with the Knights, 45-31. The defense has to tighten up, though. They have to tighten up. They got to somehow stop ECU's run game. That's why I think it's going to be high scoring. We're at home. That's going to help immensely because UCF's a totally different team in the Bounce House. But I think they win by 14, though, 45-31.
I think the injuries is what's really going to hurt UCF in this game. I picked UCF to win every single game so far this season, and I was probably this close to actually picking ECU in this football game. But I have to pick UCF at home. I don't think there's going to be any defense played in this game whatsoever. I'm going to go 42-38. I think UCF barely pulls it out, but I do think Keaton Mitchell of ECU is going to have a huge game. Watch for him to have over 100 yards rushing and possibly 2 touchdowns because I think that's the only way that ECU stays in this football game. But guys, Grant, thank you for coming on the show today, dude. You were absolutely fantastic as always. Taylor, I'm so glad that you're back from being sick and you're back in studio. Always glad to have you as my co-host. But that was nighttime this week, guys. Week 6. We'll be back for week 7 next week. See y'all later.
Things gon' change when I really hit the field. Undefeated chance, man, you know what's the deal. Tryna find a kid, I'm in the field doing drills. Boy, you just a sucker, you ain't never keep it real. 3 rings in my hand, I'm a warrior to the max. When I hang it up, they gon' have to give me plaques. Step up in the building and I only bring the facts. When I make a highlight, they gon' replay, run it back, okay? Always locked in, now I don't got time to lax. Saying he the best, he could take a lap. Batted 1,000 when you check the stats. Boy, is you ready? You ain't gotta ask.